Black and Unfiltered, a podcast made by 7 Black USF students who want to uplift and learn more about the Black community here in SF. I'm your host for today, Desta Cherry, and I'm here joined by Miss Diane. Great, sorry. So first, how's your day?
It is good. It's Friday.
That it is. That it is. And yeah, we're both really happy it's Friday. I'm glad to be done with the week. So let's jump into our podcast.
Absolutely.
So first, could you share with us about your journey growing up in San Francisco and what influenced your passion in education and community here?
Absolutely. So it has to start with my parents. I had young parents. When I was born, my mom was 19, my dad was 20. Grew up in the Bayview Hunters Point community. And actually, my dad also grew up in the Bayview community as well. And my mom grew up in South of Market. Neither one of them are native San Franciscans, but came to the city when they were very young through the whole shipyard and jobs that were going on at the shipyard, and their parents came out to San Francisco and to the Bay Area, the greater Bay Area. And so my journey is really through my parents. Even though my parents were young, they were very well read. They were good students when they were in school. But of course, because they had me young, they tried to finish school. They finished high school, that was fine, but trying to go to college was a little bit difficult because they started a family early. But they made sure that my brother and my brother came 3 years after me, 2.5, 3 years after me, that we were exposed to as much as they could expose us to. My dad came from probably a pretty solid middle class family. My mom was lower income family. And so my dad had been exposed to quite a bit. And so he made sure that my brother and I were exposed as well. Always books on the shelves. My mom always dragging us to the library on 3rd Street, the Bayview Library. And so it was just that modeling in our family that's like education was important, reading was important. So those kind of things. Had a wonderful childhood on our block. We had a lot of kids on our block, and many of them came from two-parent households. Some single parent, but the majority of them, which was really funny. We lived one block off of 3rd Street, and in the Bayview Hunters Point community, and so just had a wonderful childhood of a whole bunch of things. We lived right at the end of our block was a sewer system, so we got the smells and the and whatever was in the air that we didn't know what was in the air at the time. We got all of that. Slaughterhouse was like 3 blocks away.
Wow.
I remember when a cow got loose and ran down 3rd Street, all of those kinds. Yeah, exactly. So, but we had a wonderful childhood. Went to elementary school right there in the community, and so my love of education, didn't even know, that many years later that I would even be doing this work in my community in education. But always, even through middle school and high school, was always involved in something and volunteering, and watched my mom do a lot of things in church and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, it's a funny kind of journey. It's just like, I think that I would, as a young person, would always be in programs and doing different things all over the city. And I think that just opened my eyes to a lot. And again, with my dad, his exposure as a young person as well, and he was raised by, of course, his mom and his stepdad, and his stepdad had businesses and those kind of things. Actually, one in the community, a business, cleaners in the community, in the Bayview community. And so just having that, just being open in that way, and my dad being exposed, he exposed us as well. And he just took us on the road all the time. We were driving to different lakes and all of this kind of stuff. And so that really opened my eyes to a bunch of things. And I think put me on that road to just being accepting of a lot of different opportunities and experiences. And so, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, hearing you talk about like having so many books in your house reminded me of my house. My dad is a librarian and my mom is a professor. So it's literally like as soon as you open the doors to my house, it's literally like a library.
Yeah.
And so the same type of thing where they like very much emphasize education and just everything that has to do with that.
Yeah.
So hearing that was super cool.
Yeah.
And it's really cool that your parents like, because of all, how like stereotypes and stuff will be about young parents and stuff, but it's really cool to hear that they still like emphasize it so much.
Yeah.
And made sure that their kids knew how important it was, because that's something that unfortunately not just young parents, a lot of parents like don't emphasize as much as I feel like they should.
Right.
And so whenever I hear that, I'm like, yes.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Scholarly
It really is something. And it was during that time of civil rights, going into the Black Power movement, a lot of, reading a lot of scholars, and a lot of our Black activists who were writing, and we had all those books on the shelves, all the time. And like I said, both my parents were avid readers. And so, it really was a special household for us, just to see that. I remember, I'll just mention one, when I was in high school, I had this class. It was called Black Sociology. And the teacher introduced this book, and she raised the book, and she was like, has anybody ever read this book or seen this book? And I was actually 10th grade. This was when high school started at 10th grade. So I was just starting high school. And I go, and it was a classroom full of juniors and seniors. And somehow I needed a class, and they just put us in this. It was two of us that were actually 10th graders just starting high school. So I raised my hand very shyly, and she was like, Diane, you know this book? And I was like, yeah. She said, you read this book? And I was like, no, but my dad has. It's on the bookshelf. And it was called Before the Mayflower, And so, and those were the kind of books that, we had on the shelf. So, that introduction it followed me all through my life. Yeah.
And real quick before I segment off that, I actually was just a sociology major, like 2 weeks ago. I just switched it, but I still have it as my my minor.
Okay.
So that's fun to hear. And I'm taking an African American culture sociology class next semester, so I thought that was super cute. But speaking on that, so I guess but also, is there anything else that's inspired your co-founding and executive directing of the Bayview Association for the Youth and the 100% College Prep Institute? Could you let our audience know like a brief overview of what those both are?
Absolutely. So my cousin and I, first cousins, our mothers are sisters. She was a school bus driver, and she was actually dropping kids off at this community center in the Bayview. And she became moonlighted as a van driver for a girls group. And probably a few months after that, they lost a facilitator of the girls group. And so while the organization was looking, a nonprofit organization was looking for another facilitator, they asked her, can you keep the girls engaged while we look for someone? And these were preteen to probably maybe 14 years old. So probably about 11 or 12 to like 14. And so she ran out of things to like really talk about and how, engaging these young women. And so she called me up and she was like, I don't know what else to do. What else can we do? And so I came aboard and I, came up with some ideas of things that we could do. And before you knew it, we were the ones facilitating the girls group. So they never hired anybody. We volunteered.
You just got the job, basically.
Yeah, she got paid as the van driver. But, you know, we just volunteered to do that. And how the 100% all came about, there was this conference every year that actually toured around the country, and it was called African American Women on Tour.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was really cool. It had this rites of passage component to it, where young girls and women could be a part of the rites of passage. So I told my cousin, I have been to like 2 of the conferences when they came to the Bay Area, and I said, hey, you know, it's going to be in LA this year. Why don't we raise money to take the girls? And we did that. And on one of the evenings that we were there, I think it was like over a 3-day, 4-day period, and the girls were participating in the rites of passage part of the conference. And so we debriefed that night, and we started talking a little bit about careers and school, and then we came back to the city and just kept that going, and didn't like what we heard. You know, I don't like school. My teacher doesn't like me. I don't know anyone who went to college and those kind of things. So I had gone to college. My cousin had done a little bit of college. And so we just brainstormed what would have helped us as we were on that journey, right? And so we engaged some of their parents. Of course, we, you know, by this time knew their parents. We had taken them to LA and all of that, and got to know parents. And then parents, my cousin and I, we just got together and we just created just things out of the air. And this organization where we were volunteering was in an old Catholic school in the community. And they gave us a classroom. And so we contacted different colleges. We got college catalogs and posters and pennants and all of these things to like just make it like a really college kind of room. So we asked the organization, hey, can you get us, you know, can you pay for tutors? And they were like, absolutely, we can pay for tutors. So a one day a week girls group turned into a second day of tutoring and just college prep information. And so, and that's how we really started. And for actually for 7 years, we just operated as a grassroots community-ran organization. You know, parents cooked, so we had dinner on some of those, you know, on at least one of those nights, and it just went from there. And we had no intention of starting a nonprofit. We had no intention of this, like, you know, really like flying, and it really did. And what we found out with our school district as well, our public school district, which I will talk about later because I ended up working for SFUSD because of the community work that I was doing. But we found out that even those students who were doing well in school were not being advised, were not getting any guidance, had not met with their counselors. And these were students that had maybe were 10th grade going into 11th grade and, you know, getting ready to start that journey. And so that was really alarming to us. And so we began to start connecting with the school. We began to start teaching our parents how to engage and have conversations with teachers, with administrators, with counselors. And then we even set up where our students, every month, they had a list of questions that they had to ask their counselor. So if you've never met your counselor before, here's a list of questions. And every month, you know, depending on where you were in high school, whether you were a freshman or whether you were a junior, here are a list of questions you should be asking your counselor. And so we would give like little gifts and those kind of things, you know, when students would come back with answers or they would share all of that. And so that's really how 100% College Prep got started. And then we started thinking about young people coming back to our community, to our city, to help run the city, really, right? And so, at the time, Bayview Hunters Point was a much larger black community than it is right now. But we found that there was just a lot of inequities in schools. There were teachers saying all kind of things to students. And we really focused on maybe 2 or 3 high schools that the majority of our students attended, and a majority lived right there in the Bayview Hunters Point community. Some, at least in District 10, some lived in the Visitation Valley. We had a few from the OMI community, but largely there were the Bayview Hunters Point students that could walk to our site. That was the other thing too. At a point, the nonprofit that we were working under went bust, and they went out of business. And so we were like, oh boy, because we weren't even a nonprofit or anything, and we didn't have a place to actually have programming and provide services. And so what actually happened after that, we had this event that we used to have. It actually stopped. The last one was before the pandemic, and we haven't picked it up again. But we would have this musical showcase where we would raise money. And it was cool. Like a Motown review.
Oh, that's
and
cool. And
the first one was really when we went to LA, with the young ladies were like, how do we raise money to go to LA? And so my cousin came up with this idea, and so with that, at one of our events, our district supervisor was there, and actually the mayor, Willie Brown at the time, he came to our event as well at the Bayview Opera House. And we just talked about, hey, we don't have a place to operate anymore. And there was this wonderful building that had sat empty, a good decade.
Dang.
Just sitting there. And it was owned by another nonprofit organization that were black women. It was called the Crispus Addicts Club, also known as the Bayview Youth Center. And it's an old Victorian. And our district supervisor just mentioned it to us, like, hey, this building is just sitting there. There's a nonprofit, they just became owners, and see what you can do. And we ended up moving into that spot.
Yay.
Yeah, and we're now, Bayview
Still
Association for Youth is the owner.
Oh.
So it's after 10 years of being there, then it was just deeded over to us, And so anyway, we ended up with this space, and again, our parents came in. They were regulars at many of our after school sessions, just, around, just cleaning up, doing whatever they could do. And again, we weren't a nonprofit, and we were just operating. We shared the space with a couple of other organizations to make sure we kept things up. And we just wanted to make sure that our young people had a safe place. We were, at the time we moved in, there was gang activity in both directions. So our kids had to navigate, particularly our young brothers, had to navigate to get to the building safely. But we went through, we got through all of that, and our first couple of graduating classes out of high school were males. So we had, I think our first year was like 5 males. The next year was like 7. And then I think our third we had some females that finally graduated. But yeah, we had a lot of males that felt like this was a safe haven for them. They looked like all the other brothers, had on backwards, big T-shirts, big baggy pants. But they wanted, we feel like they wanted something more, and we wanted to provide that space and that environment and the love and the guidance that they weren't getting, right? And so I think a lot of the young men really connected with that. We didn't even have to outreach to kids. They would all
they would come to you?
They would all outreach to each other, bring their friends, and all of that. And this space, it's 3 floors, and we just turned this space into a place where kids could just thrive, in an after-school setting. And we started going on HBCU tours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we just came back from one last week.
Cool.
Yeah, so we go to different regions of the South. So last week we had like 39 young people, and we visited colleges in North Carolina, South Carolina. And I think only 2 schools we had students that are actually in college at a couple of schools when we were on the tour, which is always real cool.
Yeah, it's always nice to see like all your hard work and then, like,
absolutely.
the students took it. Yeah.
So now we partner with a number of organizations who we provide seats for them to be on our tour. Because in the past we had maybe between 15 and 25 students that will go on tours. And we designed it where if a student started with us at 9th grade, ideally every year on a tour they could see a different region of the South. Cool, cool. Different areas, you know. So that is really the work. And I think as we transitioned from, well, we didn't really transition. It was always 100% college prep. That was what we were known for in the community. And then when we decided, like, wow, we really have something here, maybe we should become a nonprofit, we had some folks that came in from the community and like, we'll help you guys, like, fill out all the paperwork. And, you know, some folks who were experienced in this area. And we were going to start the nonprofit under the name of 100% College Prep, but we were doing a whole bunch of other things. We were doing basketball tournaments, and we were doing our little musical showcase. And I think there was something else. There was something else that we were doing as well. And so we talked to someone who was in marketing, and they said, maybe you don't want to go with the name of 100% College Prep because some people think that you're only going to do college and you're doing some of these other things. And so someone came up, one of our friends came up with Bayview Association for Youth. And that's the name that we actually use for the nonprofit. And then 100% came like under that. But no one for years, and even now, know who Bayview Association for Youth is. They only know 100% College Prep. But
that's really cool.
Yeah, so, you know, building relationships with schools and those kind of things. So, yeah, it's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah, and I really like how you were saying that you guys involve, like, the parents in it, too, because I feel like sometimes, a lot of the time, some of these organizations, they'll obviously teach the kids to advocate for themselves, but it always helps to have, like, your parent, like an authoritative figure, be able to also get the tools to help your child in school, because they already want to do it. Like, that's your parent most of the time. But it's just nice to hear that you guys focus on that too, and to hear like that so many kids would like talk to their own friends about it and stuff like that. I think that's always really cool, and it shows that like the program itself was working really well for the kids to the point that they wanted other people to join it too.
Absolutely, and you know what came out of that as well is some parents went back to school as well.
Oh, that's so cool.
We had
that's so cool.
more than a dozen parents who decided to go back, and even last week when we were on the college tour, I always have this couple of text groups of parents and families, and every day I'm sharing pictures with them and what we're doing, and 2 of the parents are like, I just going back to school myself. You know, really that kind of thing. Yeah, really and cool. So, you know, just seeing their children on this journey, you know, lets them know that, hey, I need to model this as well. Or, you know, my job is now saying in order for me to move up, this is what I need, you know, so I got to go back.
So now I got to do it. Yeah. But yeah, so I'd still like to talk about this more, but we're going to take a break for right now. Yeah, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back to our podcast, In Our Own Words, Black and Unfiltered. I'm back here with Miss Diane Gray. We're going to continue our conversation about education. So, we were talking about your organization, the Bayview Youth. I'm so sorry. Youth.
Bayview Association for Youth.
But
just say 100% college prep. That's what everybody knows. Yeah, there we go.
So we were talking about that, and then we were talking about some parents wanting to go back in, and I thought that was really cool. And then now I wanted to pivot into the 20 years of work you've done in the city. Yeah. And just, I mean, like, if you want to connect that back to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say about that.
So, Yeah, after college, I studied merchandising, so I thought I would go into buying and all of that in a department store. Became a sales associate, but kind of hit a ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so I decided, let me just get a job, make some money. And my dad was already working for the city. And so I just got a job with the city, started in small claims of all departments. And I knew that I wasn't going to stay there. And I thought, city is big, bunch of departments, and I would kind of move around when I wanted to move around, and I did just that. Mm-hmm. So I went from small claims, I went to San Francisco PUC, or the water department. That's where my dad was working. I was there for about 7 years. And then I went over to, and I was in the position, the last position I had was managing the billing and auditing department. And then I decided that I wanted to do something different, learn some new skills. Mm-hmm. So I became a special assistant to the city treasurer, which is an elected official, but kind of low-level elected official. And there were a group of us, very interesting job, took me to working at City Hall, which I love, like walking across the rotunda, like, I really work here.
It's really
and
pretty.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great job. And I was able to really learn about putting teams together. Worked for the city treasurer, Susan Leal, and I just watched how she put together great teams of people with different skill sets that, really supported what she wanted to do as a city attorney. And so in the meantime, my cousin and I were doing all this volunteer work. We were doing our girls group and so on and so forth, and it kind of all happened at the same time. And then, getting our name out in the community and what have you. And someone said, hey, there's this job with the Unified School District. It's actually working in the Bayview community with parents around literacy and leadership and all of that. And so I looked into it. It was a pay cut,
Yeah.
But I decided, because of the work that I was doing in the community already, and it was really blossoming and turning into something. And so I said, I think I'll do this. Of course, my parents thought I had lost my mind. First of all, they thought I had lost my mind from going from San Francisco PUC to the treasurer's office, because the PUC is a huge department. And you can go and, you can move in so many different ways. As a matter of fact, they tried to get me to stay. But, from the treasurer and then to the Unified School District, and where, again, I learned even more how to engage parents and adults and how to help them really become their child's educational mentor, right, and what that looked like. And so I had 3 positions with the school district, and then that's where my 20 years, I had a city classification even when I was with the district, which was great. And then I decided that really I wanted to focus on 100% and really build that out. And so I took an early retirement. I came of age. I had the years in, which was 20 years, and I took early retirement and, went down to almost no salary. And again, my parents was like, don't you have a mortgage? Yeah, and so was living right there in Bayview Hunters Point, had bought a home there in the community. And so yeah, that was my 20 years. And during that time, I really learned a lot because I was in different departments, different skill sets, and it's exactly, what I wanted to do when I started that first job. And I had already had the customer service background, because in the buying that I wanted, the career I wanted to go into, I had been into retail for a long time while I was in college. Okay. So I worked in retail the whole time. And then when I graduated from college, I started moving up a little bit, but just couldn't reach that position that I wanted. So I had that customer service background, and then just adding all the other skills with that, you know, how to navigate policy in the city. Because when I started working with the city treasurer, you know, we're doing more of that kind of work, and kind of analyst work, if you will. And so I just had a lot of, you know, ended up with a lot of really great skill sets that I wanted to bring to 100%. And even though I'm pretty much an introvert person who has learned to be an extrovert in certain spaces, yeah, it really helped me to like grow 100%. And so yeah, and so that was really my 20 years with the city. I was done and began working in the community. Yeah, and it's been about 15 years working in the community. Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah,
I think it's a very like cool and like very, I don't know, like step-by-step path, it sounds like, where like it makes sense, the like merchandising and the customer service and that type of stuff, and then going into working with the city. And because my dad is technically like a city worker, I know like city workers, not just like, because he's at the library with like other ones that are more like government based. You learn so many types of things.
You do.
And then to hear that like you use those like tools and was able to use it for like the nonprofit and that type of stuff. I feel like everything you did like gave you good knowledge and materials for whatever you were, or
so
whatever
many
was
tools.
planned next for you. Basically.
So many tools. And then with the Unified School District, the last positions that I had there, just being able to cultivate those relationships. So I worked in different areas all the way to the central office area. So I got to know, you know, associate superintendents and all of that. And so when I started working in the community, then I could, you know, go to them, have conversations, have meetings with them, and really get things done, and use that as leverage. When I went to the school district, we eventually have staff who now work in the school sites. So it was really easy for me to go in, have conversations with folks when I've already, you know, had these relationships from the central office, right? And so, I mean, a lot of folks are now retiring or have retired, so I've kind of lost a little bit of it. But you know, when you do, I feel like when you do good work, you know, it gets around, it gets around. And so even those folks who I really did not work with when I was there, you know, we just had a conversation with a school just yesterday, for example, who were like, yeah, we would love for you to come over and work with our students as well. And, you know, many of them know that we focus on Black students, though we work with everyone and can work with everyone, of course, but we do focus, you know, on our Black students to make sure that they get what they need. And that it helps the schools as well work with those young people as well. Yeah.
Because unfortunately, in all ways, we're the most affected. So
Exactly.
Also, it's like a known thing. I was actually just learning about, I forget the terminology exactly, but like in one of my classes, we were like learning about, it's my sociology class actually. Learning about how like with Black feminism, like one of the core like ideals of it is when like specifically Black women, but like Black people benefit, it benefits everybody else. So even if you are like, you know how people will complain when you're like helping Black people. It's like, well, everybody's gonna benefit because you're helping Black people, like obviously. But to pivot from that a little bit, so you have your infamous quote, "My success is your success." Can you tell us about the origin of it, and then also like just the importance of it for you and for like the work you do, because like it makes sense with the work we've heard that you have been doing, but I just want to hear about it.
So actually it came from a conversation with our young people around the word success. You know, what does success really look like for you? And you know, we had a group of our young people, brothers and sisters, and you know, what we got was, you know, I'm planning on living large. That was the, you know, I'm gonna drive the car, I'm gonna wear the clothes, I'm gonna have the jewelry, all of that. Okay, well that's cool. But, you know, taking it deeper. And so they were like, Miss Diane, you know, like that's what we, you know. So I had already like thought in my head, what or what was currently my success, right? And I was like, my success is seeing them succeed, right? And to the point of watching them fly when they didn't know they had wings.
There you go.
You know what
That's
I mean?
another
And
good
so,
piece to write that one
yeah,
down.
yeah. And so I said, okay, let me share with you what I'm talking about as far as success. Let's go a little bit deeper. And so that's what I said. I was like, I'm not successful if you're not successful. I said, we're not here in this building just to be here in this building. I'm not. You know, you guys are kicking it, have fun, and getting your work done. I said, but I'm here because I need for you to be successful and go out into the community and be successful there as well, right? And so, and that's how they were like, oh, okay.
Right,
you know,
right.
and so they started thinking about success differently, or maybe just their day-to-day of being in school, and I want to be successful on this exam, or I want to be successful in this particular class that I've been challenged by, or I want to find how I can be even more successful. Yeah, I'm doing good on the exams and everything, but it's just something else that I want to explore and do. And so then that was taking it deeper. And so that's what I just started saying with them, and when I was talking to them individually or talking to my team, and was like, your success is their success, and vice versa, right? We're all in this together, and we're all here for a reason. And this having this passion of making sure that our young people have what they need, and that they see themselves in us, and we provide opportunities that they see themselves in others, whether it's professionals or it's on a college campus or HBCU tours or whatever that is. And so that's how that really came about. My success is your success. Yeah, and it was just all about having that conversation. That word success.
Yeah, and I really like that. I mean, I didn't have any expectation for it, but I really like that that's how it came about. Like, just emphasizing how, like, with the kids, like, talking about success with them, and then them, like, seeing you and hearing you and, like, learning from you.
Right.
And it is, like, a very true statement, like, especially I feel like with black people, because we only have ourselves.
Right,
so,
right.
like, and it's specifically with, like your parents and the older people, like, just, they always want, no matter what, they always want to see you succeed, and that is what keeps them going usually. Even if it's tough and, like, you're making them mad or something, they're mad because they care and because they want you to succeed.
Absolutely.
So I really like that quote, and I really like the background for it.
Yeah.
And I'm so sad because we're ending soon, but my last question will be, what are you most proud of, and what impact do you hope to leave? And then, just real quick at the end, what advice for youth who also want to make a difference, what advice do you have for them?
So, first, I would say, when I see young people and they say, guess what I'm doing? And it's something that I knew that they could do. For example, this young man, he was always, like, volunteering with other youth in our community. And I was like, you should go in education, right? This is when he was in college. I had watched him since he was like 12 or 13 years old, just like other young kids just navigating to him and, connecting with him and all of that. And he was navigating through all of that. And so when he was in college, I said, he always loved sports. And he said, no, I'm going to be go into sports and either an agent or some kind of, in broadcasting or something like that. And I was like, man, you really should go into education. And so he graduated from college, and that September, after he had graduated, I think in May or June, he called me up and he said, guess where I am? And I said, where? He said, at a middle school. He is a principal now in Philadelphia. And so, and so he ended up in Philadelphia because he got married. That's where his wife was from. And he now raising his children and all of that. And it was just so cool to, like, point young people, in a direction that they may be interested in. And then maybe they find out they're not.
Yeah,
You know
but
what I
it's always
mean?
good to,
Yeah,
like,
maybe they find out that's not for me, but
it's always good to try.
yeah, but to see that impact of a student, and our profile of our student is actually that average student, right? They're just bumping along. No one's paying attention. They don't necessarily have any major behavioral issues, but they're not getting any advice. And to really be able to mold them and expose them to what's really out there other than, beyond the block is just, that's the impact that I wanted to make. And that's the impact that, I try to convey to my staff, right? You want to do anything that you want to do, you can do that. It's going to take work. It's not going to be anything that's necessarily easy, but if you love to do it, you're going to put forth that effort. What I would tell young people today who want to go into education or a nonprofit, I oftentimes get young people who want to start a nonprofit because of work that they're doing in the community or things that they see that's not being addressed, right? Issues that are not being addressed, is to first, because they want to do the front work. Nonprofit is running a business, right? It's running a business that doesn't make profit,
exactly.
right? And so you still need all the professionals. You need an accountant and bookkeeper, and you got to get insurance and all of these other things. Try working under another nonprofit and, do the work that you want to do, and then figure out, do you want to do the other parts of the nonprofit? And I just kind of lay out all of the work that goes into making 100% a success, right? Yes, it's the personal interaction, but it's also the business side of it that you have to keep up with, that oftentimes in our community is what we sometimes get in trouble for, not doing all the paperwork and all of that, is because we really want to make a difference in our community, and not do all of the other, But the very first thing that my cousin and I did when we became a nonprofit, I said, we have to have a bookkeeper, right? We have to have someone to keep our books, and we have to find someone who's going to do our taxes, right? So that we can continue this, and when we're ready to go to apply for grants and all those things, we have things in order. And so that was the very first thing. We didn't pay ourselves for many, many years, and my cousin really didn't at all. And we wanted to put our money into strengthening the work that we were doing, and that was really important to us, that we stay on top of all the other things that we didn't want to do, but we contract that out, or we found people who could do that work for us. And so, go after your passion, and make sure that you're in an environment where you can learn from others, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. All you know is, I want to feed the community. Whatever that, whether it's information or if it really physically is food, right? You want to do that work, and that's what you have a passion for, then do that work, but make sure that you're doing it where you're in an environment that you can learn
and succeed.
And succeed.
And succeed. That, it was nice to hear about that principle. I really, really like that, because guess what? Your success was his success.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
But yeah, no, that was really good advice, and it was really, really nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you for inviting me.
We have to end, unfortunately.
It went so fast.
I know, it did go so fast, but hey, maybe we'll invite you back for a part 2.
I'd love to come back.
Hey.
Yeah.
So anyways, guys, I guess that's all for the podcast today. Once again, I am your host, Desta Cherry, for today, and this has been the lovely Miss Diane Gray. And that's the end of our episode for today, guys. Goodbye. Thank you. See ya.